Next, I'll tell you the incredible story of how the brazen fake HOA cops arrested my wife. Fake HOA officers arrested my wife, but everything fell apart for them when her CIA team stormed in. It all started on a typical evening in our quiet, suburban neighborhood. There was a knock on the door, and just like that, our nightmare began, unfolding in a way so simple and unexpected that we never saw it coming. My wife had always kept a low profile, easily blending into our peaceful cul-de-sac of manicured lawns and friendly faces. But on that day, two men showed up, pretending to be HOA officers, flashing fake badges and wearing matching uniforms. They claimed they were there to arrest her over some ridiculous bylaw violation. What they didn't know was that beneath her calm, friendly demeanor lay a secret identity that could tear their little act apart. By the time her CIA team got there, those imposters didn't stand a chance. Before we dig deeper into the story, if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss a thing. And if you're enjoying this story already, let us know. Your feedback keeps me going and helps me bring you more inspiring and entertaining tales. Press 1 if you liked the video, or 0 if you didn't. Your opinion means a lot to me. Now, this story takes place in Maple Hills, a peaceful suburban neighborhood just outside of Denver, Colorado. On the surface, nothing about Maple Hills seemed like it would ever be the backdrop for anything dramatic. It was a kind of place where people got together for potlucks, had holiday decorating contests, and enjoyed quiet block parties. The biggest disagreements usually had to do with whose lawn wasn't getting mowed often enough. Honestly, I used to feel lucky to live somewhere so simple. My wife, Lena, though I call her L for short, always joked that if people around here knew what her real job was, they'd think we were pulling off some kind of prank. She worked as an analyst for the CIA, doing specialized data infiltration work. Her cover story? She was a tech consultant for a startup out in Aurora. It was a perfect setup, totally unremarkable and believable, and gave her a good excuse for the occasional work trip. Everything was fine in Maple Hills until that summer afternoon. I opened our front door, and there stood two guys in sharp navy uniforms, holding badges that read HOA enforcement. The thing is, I'd lived in Maple Hills long enough to know we didn't have any sort of official HOA enforcement team. Sure, we had a homeowners association, but it was just a small group of volunteers and a management company. There was no squad with badges or arrest powers. That day changed everything. The first thing that threw me off was how aggressively these so-called HOA officers acted. They introduced themselves as Officer Harris and Officer Kimball, carrying clipboards with the Maple Hills logo. They demanded to talk to Lena. She was in the kitchen making coffee, unaware of the confrontation about to unfold. Before I could ask about their sketchy-looking badges, they insisted on seeing her. I tried to be polite, saying, "There's got to be a mistake here. We don't have any HOA security team. Who gave you permission to be here?" My heart was pounding as their eyes scanned the room, like they were looking for something illegal. Just then, Lena walked into the foyer, wiping flour off her apron. She'd been baking a pie for our elderly neighbor. The men immediately hit her with accusations about surveillance equipment being found in the neighborhood. Lena just raised an eyebrow. I knew that look. It was the same composed expression she wore during her high-stakes CIA operations. Calmly, she said, "Gentlemen, I think you're mistaken. Let's go outside and talk this through." But they weren't having it. "We're taking you in right now," one of them sneered. Despite my protests, they grabbed her by the wrists and shoved her out the door. Watching my wife get manhandled like some common criminal sent a wave of fury and fear through me. But what really got me was how calm she stayed. She didn't resist. She didn't raise her voice. No panicking, no fighting. Just that same unreadable calm. Our neighbors had already started gathering outside, watching from their lawns and porches. In Maple Hills, gossip spreads faster than anything. The fake officers barked at them to stay back, trying to enforce some phony authority. I followed closely behind, demanding to know what grounds they had for arresting her. They mumbled something about domestic espionage and infiltrating the HOA's private database. It was so absurd, I couldn't decide whether to be furious or frightened. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Mrs. Roberts, our elderly neighbor, holding her phone with trembling hands, probably calling the actual police. Lena's face stayed calm, but I noticed a flicker in her eyes. She was scanning the scene, making mental notes. Their heights, the type of boots they wore, the badges. She was preparing. They shoved her into the back of a dark SUL, which had a homemade decal that said Maple Hills HOA Enforcement. The phone number on the side was suspiciously close to the actual HOA helpline, but was off by one digit. As they tried to force her inside, I shouted, "This is kidnapping. You have no legal right to do this." The men ignored me, but I could tell by the way their shoulders tensed that they knew something was wrong. Real officers don't just ignore accusations of kidnapping. At that moment, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, my hands shaking, and saw an unknown number. I answered, and a calm but urgent voice came through. "Mr. Pearson, don't be alarmed. This is Sophie Green from the CIA Rapid Response Unit." I froze. Sophie was Elle's boss. Her call could only mean one thing. Lena had activated an emergency protocol, the kind that was top secret, known only to a select few. Now here I was, in our quiet cul-de-sac, hearing it for real. Before I could even respond, Sophie's voice continued, "We're tracing your location now. Keep them there. Stall for as long as you can. Agents are on their way." My heart raced as I frantically tried to come up with a distraction that could stop these phony HOA officers from taking off with my wife. The SUL's engine roared to life, its dark windows hiding her face. Officer Bradley, behind the wheel, was eager to drive off, but I threw myself toward the driver's window. I wasn't trained for this, and I knew full well how dangerous it was to jump in front of a moving car. But all I could think about was saving Elle. Fear for her completely drowned out any other instinct. Harris slammed the brakes, the tires screeching, stopping just inches from my legs. His partner, Kimball, leaned out the window and barked, "You're interfering with official HOA business. We can arrest you too, you know." My mind was racing now. I spread my arms wide, determined to block their path. Neighbors began gathering around, forming an unplanned barricade with worried looks and phones recording the chaos. Toby, a teenager from next door, had already started live streaming everything, and it was clearly getting under the skin of these guys. Kimball's hand moved to his belt, where an old-looking gun rested. My throat tightened. I half expected things to take a dark turn. But then, a siren rang out in the distance, not the usual sound of local police, but a sharp, distinct wail from an unmarked federal car. Sophie's words still echoed in my head. "Agents are on their way." My pulse hammered as it hit me. This situation was spiraling into something way beyond a bogus HOA arrest. We had no clue just how dangerous these men actually were. The siren grew louder, and soon, two sleek black SULs appeared, their government plates glinting. It was all so quick, almost like a scene ripped out of an action movie, playing out right here on our quiet street. The SULs barely stopped before four plain-clothed figures stepped out with a precision that screamed highly trained. Leading them was a tall woman with short silver hair and dark sunglasses. I knew her right away from a picture Lena had secretly shown me. Sophie Hall, the legendary CIA agent, famous for pulling off critical missions overseas. With one glance, Sophie assessed everything. She raised her hand, signaling for the neighbors to back off. Then, with a sharp command, her team closed in on the fake HOA vehicle, their weapons drawn but steady at their sides. Harris and Nolan exchanged frantic looks. The confidence they had a moment ago evaporated as fast as their options to escape. I could see Lena inside the SUL, calm as ever, her wrists still tied with plastic zip ties. But when she saw Sophie, she gave a small, knowing smile. That's when Kimball, desperate, flung open the passenger door, hoping to make a run for it. He didn't get far. Two of Sophie's agents tackled him to the ground after just a couple of steps. Bradley, frozen in shock, sat behind the wheel, unable to move. Sophie's voice cut through the chaos, cold and authoritative. "On behalf of the United States government, you're under arrest." Her agents pulled Harris from the SUL, pinning him against the vehicle and cuffing him. Watching these two men, who had moments earlier strutted around as if they were in charge, reduced to cowering and sputtering, was surreal. The black SULs, armed agents, and my wife's calmness all made Maple Hills feel like the set of some high-stakes spy movie. Freed from her restraints, Lena stepped forward and fixed her gaze on Harris and Kimball. "Who do you really work for?" she asked, her voice sharp, addressing them officially for the first time. They opened their mouths, but no words came. Their false sense of control had crumbled, replaced by pure fear. Sophie gestured for me to stand next to her. "Your wife has been investigating a group of con artists posing as local officials," she explained quietly. "We had some leads, but we didn't expect them to try something as bold as kidnapping in broad daylight." My mind was spinning. These guys were part of something much bigger, possibly not even from around here. I thought back to the strange cars I'd seen cruising our neighborhood late at night. This was no random scam. Soon, real police cruisers, marked with Denver Police Department logos, arrived on the scene. Their lights were flashing as they set up a perimeter, keeping the neighbors behind the yellow caution tape. Confusion spread through the crowd, but Sophie didn't miss a beat. She exchanged quick words with the police chief, flashing her federal credentials. The local officers quickly stepped back, letting the CIA take control. Slowly, neighbors began coming forward, recounting their strange encounters with Harris and Kimball. Mrs. Roberts told the officers how they tried to fine her for a garden gnome that supposedly violated HOA rules. Mr. Monroe mentioned how they'd cornered him in his driveway, demanding immediate payment for a supposed landscaping violation. All of these shady charges had seemed odd, but people just thought it was a new, overzealous HOA. Lena took notes carefully, occasionally sharing a glance with Sophie. The way they worked together, you could tell this wasn't their first rodeo. Meanwhile, I stood there, heart still pounding, trying to wrap my head around the fact that my wife's secret CIA career had just come crashing into our front yard. Little did I know, this was just the start. These fake HOA cops were the tip of the iceberg. The real threat was about to reveal itself in a way I couldn't have imagined. As the agents and local police pieced together what had happened, one of Sophie's colleagues approached me. His badge read Agent Hollister, a name I recognized from an old CIA contact list I'd once seen on Lena's computer. Bennett asked me quietly, "Have you noticed anything strange around here recently? Any odd vehicles or unfamiliar people?" I thought for a second. There was a van parked by the pool a few nights in a row, no plates. When I got close, it sped off. Bennett nodded, as though that confirmed something for him. He stepped aside to take a phone call, lowering his voice. Moments later, a beeping sound came from inside the fake HOA SUL. One of the CIA agents ran over to investigate and found a small device hidden under the back seat. A tiny red light blinked steadily. "Possible explosive or tracker," the agent shouted. A wave of panic spread through the crowd. A few neighbors let out startled cries, ducking behind bushes and parked cars. The agent carefully picked up the device, using gloved hands. It turned out to be a GPS tracker, hooked up to a circuit board that looked unfamiliar. Harris and Kimball's eyes widened with fear they couldn't hide. They swore they had no idea what it was, but their denials did little to calm the growing panic. Sophie ordered the bomb squad to search the entire area. They went over the SUL, checked the neighbors' vehicles, and even scoured the storm drains. Meanwhile, Lena stood leaning against the hood of a police car, arms crossed, calmly grilling the two men. "Why did you target this neighborhood? Who's behind all this?" she pressed. Harris kept his mouth shut, but Nolan stumbled over his words. "We were hired. It's just a job," he muttered. That only confirmed our worst fears. Someone higher up had orchestrated their infiltration into Maple Hills. The day had spiraled out of control. Just 30 minutes earlier, I was soaking up the lazy afternoon sun, without a care in the world. Now, the street looked like it had been turned into the scene of some covert sting operation. Agent Bennett approached, looking grim. He leaned in to whisper something to Lena, and I saw her face fall. She gestured for me to come closer. "I have to leave town," she said softly, her voice tinged with regret. Sophie wants me at a secure facility right away for a full debrief. This whole thing is bigger than we thought. These guys aren't just running a scam. They might be tied to an organized group that's been targeting federal employees. My stomach dropped. I had never seen Lena this shaken before. I squeezed her hand, not ready to let her go. I watched in shock as another group of unmarked government vehicles arrived to take her away. Sophie stayed back to handle the aftermath, but made it clear she'd join Lena as soon as the area was secure. The whole neighborhood was in a frenzy, with rumors and speculation flying. People were worried about identity theft, data breaches, and wondering who might be next. The local police chief tried to reassure everyone. "We're working closely with federal agencies to keep you safe," he promised. But I could feel the anxiety rising all around us. Harris and Nolan were led away in cuffs, their eyes darting around like they were searching for a way out that didn't exist anymore. I overheard them mumbling something about the boss not forgiving them for this mess. My hands trembled as I grasped the enormity of what had just gone down. Was Maple Hills just a random target, or had Lena and I been singled out? By nightfall, the police tape was still up. News vans lined the street, bright lights shining on our once peaceful neighborhood. Reporters from every station buzzing with the story of a supposed CIA agent arrested by a fake HOA. The media went wild, trying to piece together the bizarre twist. But nobody had the full picture yet. For the next few days, the neighborhood was under quiet but constant federal surveillance. There were vans parked on corners, unmarked cars driving around at odd times, and many of us even noticed drones flying overhead at night. Meanwhile, Lena had gone dark. Her phone went straight to voicemail every time I tried to call. I threw myself into daily routines, work, chores, even volunteering at the food bank, trying to maintain some sense of normalcy. But the worry gnawed at me. Then, one Tuesday evening, my phone rang. The caller ID showed secure line, and my heart skipped a beat. I answered, my breath catching. It was Lena. Her voice sounded strained with exhaustion, but determined. "I'm safe," she began. "We've uncovered something huge." My pulse quickened. "What is it? Tell me everything." She explained that Harris and Kimball's arrest had led the CIA to a network of imposters with access to personal data on numerous government employees. Their scheme involved causing minor disturbances in suburban neighborhoods where high-level officials lived undercover. They'd gather intel, bug homes, and stockpile sensitive information. Then, they'd sell it all on the dark web to the highest bidder. "They were specifically targeting me," Lena said. "We think they believed I had details about an overseas operation." Shaken, I asked, "So what happens now? Are we in danger?" Lena's silence on the other end said it all. Finally, she spoke. "The ringleaders aren't caught yet. We've tracked them to several states. They might strike back if they think we're getting too close." My chest tightened with fear, but I pushed it down. Lena needed me to stay strong. "Sophie's ramping up the operation," she continued. "Once we pinpoint their main base, I'll be part of the takedown. It's only a matter of time." Despite the fear, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of pride. My sweet, pie-baking wife was a skilled CIA analyst, about to help dismantle a criminal network spanning who knows how many states. Talk about leading a double life. For the days following that call, I did my best to stay calm. I shared what little information I could with the neighbors, without revealing Lena's classified role. But the tension in Maple Hills didn't go away. We all jumped at every strange car, unexpected package, or knock on the door. The real HOA was scrambling to reassure residents that there were no enforcement officers. Ironically, that only fueled the gossip that the whole neighborhood was now under government surveillance, which, let's be real, wasn't too far from the truth. About a week later, just after sunset, a black sedan pulled up in front of my house. My heart pounded. These surprise visits were never good news. Sophie Green stepped out, looking tired but determined. She motioned for me to join her in the car. Once inside, she handed me an encrypted laptop, pressing a button that brought up a live audio feed. I heard an agent's voice crackling over the speakers, teams in position. Coordinates confirmed. Infiltration in T-minus 60 seconds. I looked at Sophie wide-eyed. Is this it? The takedown. She nodded and told me to listen. My mouth went dry as the tension on the other end grew, with agents breathing heavily and whispering orders. Then I heard Lena's voice, calm and focused. She was leading a small team in an infiltration of a remote storage facility near Omaha, Nebraska. The ringleaders had chosen it for its secluded location. Through the static of the feed, I could piece together what was happening. There were locked gates, armed guards, and the low hum of a drone overhead. Then came the sounds of a brief, tense confrontation. Shouts, footsteps, and a few muffled gunshots that sent a shiver down my spine. Sophie's grip on my shoulder tightened, and she mouthed, "She's okay." Then, just like that, the call cut out. My heart raced as I sat there, holding my breath, desperately waiting for any new information. After what felt like forever, Lena's voice came back on, filled with adrenaline. "Target secure," she said. She continued, "We've got eyes on the stolen data hardware, multiple suspects in custody. No casualties on our side." A collective sigh of relief echoed through the command team. Sophie allowed herself a brief smile before closing the laptop. "It's over," she whispered. "They got them." I sank back into my seat, overwhelmed by a mix of relief, exhaustion, and a strange kind of awe. Sophie and I stepped out of the car, just in time for a few nosy neighbors to catch sight of our mysterious rendezvous. She gave me a nod as a farewell. "Lena's being debriefed. She should be home soon. You both did a great job." Before I could thank her, she was gone, her taillights fading into the night. When Lena finally came home 2 days later, there was no fanfare. The media storm that had surrounded us before had quieted down. In Maple Hills, the chaos had finally settled. People were more cautious, but life was starting to go back to its usual peaceful pace. It wasn't long before I pieced together the whole story. The main stash of stolen intel had been destroyed, and indictments were already rolling out for a whole network of conspirators. Lena had become a quiet hero in certain circles, but to the outside world, she was still just the unassuming consultant who solved tech problems. And then there was Bradley, Kimball, and their crew. They got exactly what was coming to them, facing a mountain of federal charges for impersonating law enforcement, kidnapping, conspiracy, and even espionage. One by one, they were dragged into court. The media, which had once been enthralled by their ridiculous suburban scam, now covered their downfall with barely hidden satisfaction. No bail for any of them, the judge ruled, since they were a clear national security risk. Their smug arrogance had dissolved into shaky apologies, and their fake badges were nothing but a painful reminder of their failed con. For the neighbors who had been left feeling violated, there was some closure. The real HOA put out a formal statement, promising Maple Hills would never allow such a bizarre, self-deputizing scheme again. At the same time, the Denver police and the CIA worked quietly together to make sure no other neighborhoods would face anything like this again. It felt like a victory for our community, proof that even the most cunning criminals eventually get what's coming to them. Lena and I watched the news in our living room, letting out a sigh of relief each time new charges were filed against the conspirators. As thrilling as the story was, it was terrifying to realize just how close we had come to something much worse. Most people had no idea how many times Elle had faced these kinds of dangers before in places far from home. But gradually, Maple Hills found its rhythm again, slipping back into the quiet hum of suburban life. Every now and then, a reporter would cruise by, hoping to get an exclusive, but the neighbors would wave them off. Soon, the block parties were back, and people were baking pies again. Lena slipped back into her usual low-key life, never drawing attention to the fact that she had been the one to help take down a criminal network. The few neighbors who thought they knew her secret kept it to themselves. But there were still subtle reminders of what had happened. An official CIA car would sometimes drive through the neighborhood. Security cameras popped up the corners, and folks seemed a little more alert. We, too, stayed more vigilant. We'd learned the hard way that threats could come dressed up as something as ordinary as an HOA complaint. One night over dinner, we reflected on how surreal it all was. Lena admitted that throughout her entire career, she'd managed to keep her work and personal life separate. And yet, the biggest threat she had ever faced showed up right on our doorstep, in the form of wannabe cops with delusions of grandeur. She said her biggest fear wasn't for herself, it was for our neighbors, the good people of Maple Hills who just wanted to feel safe in their own community. At least we got them, she said. That's one crisis behind us. But there was one last twist. Rumors started circulating that the ringleaders behind the fake HOA officers had connections to an international crime syndicate. The FBI expanded their investigation, and soon they were looking into possible ties in Chicago, Seattle, and beyond. I half expected Lena to get called back into the fray, but she assured me that her part in this was done. I did what I could, she said with a smile, though her eyes still held that mix of relief and lingering watchfulness. Meanwhile, Maple Hills saw an outpouring of support. Neighbors helped each other install better locks, created neighborhood watch schedules, and reconnected with each other through small get-togethers. If there was one silver lining, it was that the crisis had brought us closer together. Even Toby, the teenager who had filmed the whole fiasco, turned his online channel into a platform for neighborhood safety tips, and, ironically, he ended up getting more views than ever. In the aftermath, I couldn't help but think about how fragile our sense of normalcy can be. A couple of fake officers, flashing their phony authority, had almost torn apart the peace we took for granted. But in standing up to that threat, we discovered the hidden strength of our community and the unspoken bravery of my wife's extraordinary career. In the end, Maple Hills didn't come out broken. We came out stronger, closer, and determined not to be fooled again. And that, my friends, is the wild tale of how an ordinary afternoon turned into a high-stakes thriller in one of the least likely places, a quiet suburban neighborhood called Maple Hills. From fake HOA cops kidnapping my wife to a dramatic rescue by a CIA team, and all the shocking revelations that followed, this story is living proof that danger can show up when you least expect it. If you've stuck with us through the whole ride, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. You won't want to miss our next video, where we dive even deeper into more unbelievable stories. Thanks for watching, and remember to stay alert out there.